used for cricketers, sportsmen, and many people who've inspired generations. But how many people can you point out and say he was a revolution? Yes, I'm talking about the Superman from South Africa, the Flying Protea, Mr. Jonathan Neil Rhodes. I have the honor to share your middle name. So much appreciate your time, Mr. Rhodes. How have you been?
Yeah, good, thank you. I've been in India, coming to India since 1993 as a cricket player, obviously working in the IPL since 2009 as a coach, so spending a great deal of time. And now as a father and as a husband, we spend 5 months of the year based in the south of Goa. So it's great to be here in Siliguri because I've never been this far north and west before in India. So fantastic to be here and to see the talent on display through the SAM cricket tournament. I mean, phenomenal seeing the youngsters, bat, ball, and in the field. And just incredible to hear that there were 27 games, I think, in 5 days, in 3 different venues. So, cricket, we always hear as visitors to India about the passion for cricket, but so evident here today.
And your love and admiration towards India is no surprise since you've named your daughter India as well. Well, I'm sure you've been asked that question loads of times and you're bored of answering that question as well. What I would like to know, Mr. Rhodes, is that are you aware of the fact that how iconic you are? The reason why I said you were revolutionary, I spent a decent amount of time in England, and you obviously played for Gloucestershire for a brief period as well. Every time a catch has been taken, every time a super piece of fielding, an acrobatic throw, whatever it may be, even the Englishmen say, oh, that was like JONTY Rhodes. In India, probably, and dare I say, there were many youngsters who haven't seen you play, yet they're nicknamed JONTY. So much so, even our former cricketer, Navjot Singh Sidhu,
yes,
because he used to be kind of a decent fielder, I'd say that with all due respect, he was nicknamed JONTY Sidhu. So is it too flattering at times when you get to hear these things, because these are not achievements, it's way beyond that for you, Mr. Rhodes?
Well, it's interesting because in South Africa there's not an overpowering following of my fielding. I think there's some understanding that I did things slightly differently in a generation where the entire South African cricket team came back after so many years of isolation. So the timing was perfect from that standpoint, is that we were a team that was of interest to people because we'd never played before internationally. And I am always surprised that the recognition goes beyond the playing days, because that's in South Africa, they pretty much know the current crop of players and maybe some who have just retired. But once you've spent 10 years out of the limelight, the focus is on the sort of more recent players. So I am blown away in India, where I know a lot of the young people who come up to me have never seen me live, but their parents send them to the internet and show them clips and highlights. So always grateful. I keep getting asked, isn't it irritating that you weren't remembered as a batter? I said, no, I'd rather be remembered as something than nothing. So, and again, special love in India, which I'm always grateful for.
Small anecdote I'd like to share with everyone. My dad told me the first time about you. Was that there was this guy, because I never saw you play live, I didn't have the opportunity, I was too little, that he used to get man of the match awards for his fielding. So JONTY sir, as you said, you grew up in tough times as a nation for South Africa, came along, that first generation, or the second generation you might say. It was so important for you guys to lay the foundation, had a tremendous 99 World Cup as well. So how important was it for you guys to lay the foundation? And one more thing I would like to ask you. Very important question. You go to 2003 World Cup, a home World Cup, a national hero, after the hangover of the 99 World Cup, which was a heartbreak for you guys. What was that like? Because we now see India, as you've said, in India, it's like a religion. People are just obsessed. Did you feel that kind of pressure for the first time? Home country, expectations, JONTY Rhodes, Sean Pollock?
Well, I don't think so. Not massive expectation. Obviously, there is always pressure on a home team. But to go back to the first part of your question, we as cricket players had no international experience at that 92 World Cup. And then even in the first 4 years before the 96 World Cup again, we were on this constant learning sort of process. And I think it was a good lesson to learn as a cricket player, that you're never the finished product. I mean, the game changes, the opposition changes. You have to keep upskilling yourself. And it's not just in cricket, it's in life as well. If you're stagnant, you get left behind. If you're standing still, everybody else is moving forward. So I think I was really privileged to be a part of that exciting environment, and hopefully we laid a groundwork that we explain to the players coming through the system after us is that just don't take anything for granted. Every day, strive to be better, whether it's on the cricket field or off the cricket field, because you are going to be somebody who will have a following. You do have an example to set, and that's as important off the field as it is on the field. So that was the one thing. I just think from hosting a World Cup, it was going to be my last World Cup. I broke my finger in the second game. I never even got to the latter part of the tournament. But I think it doesn't matter whether you're hosting or playing. There's always undue pressure on players in a World Cup. So, South Africa never even got through to the second part of that tournament.
Aware of the pressure, or just
no, you always are. No. You can't switch. You can't go away from it. But as I said, every game, whether it's a World Cup or an international, you're always playing under pressure situations. Especially if you're batting, you've got one chance to make it. To make the runs, and if you get out, you get out. There's nothing more that you can do. And the benefits of being an all-rounder, you can contribute on bat and ball. And I suppose from my aspect, being a decent fielder, I could also still then go and make an impact.
Decent fielder.
Yeah, decent. I could go and make an impact or have an impact in the field as well. So yes, there was pressure, whether you were at home or playing in a World Cup. I mean, all 4 World Cups that I played in, home or away, there was not undue pressure, but an enormous amount of pressure, as you would expect at a World Cup.
Jonty sir, I know it's quite kind of flattering at times when people do shower love to you regarding your fielding. However, I would like to just ask you about something. When you started playing, not to make you feel old by any means, you look quite young, and you come from a nation which is famous for wine as well. So I'm sure you're aging like fine wine yourself. You played a lot of hockey,
yes.
Even when you were an international cricketer. Obviously, there was not, I would not say the concept of weight training or kind of a strict diet as such like it is today. Do you think that helped you, and do you suggest cricketers of that level, I know the number of games have gone up, to also indulge in quite competitive sports, not professionally of course, but just be, and how did that help you? Did that help you being acrobatic?
Well, I think from an aspect at school, at under 13 level, I was playing state cricket, hockey, tennis and football. And cricket is very much a straight line, batting and bowling. And the reason why I was so different was, I think, for 2 things. One, I loved the fielding. And secondly, we didn't have a fielding coach. So no one was telling us this is how you do it in the manual, because cricket was always about technique. And fielding is about instinct. And the instinct only comes from...
I'd like to just ask cut you over here, sir. Did you enjoy fielding the most? Because you were an all-rounder.
Yeah, without doubt. I mean, at the start of my provincial or state cricket, I was batting in the middle order. I used to almost throw up in the dressing room, in the toilet. I was that nervous. But in the field, because again, you get one opportunity as a batter. In the field, if I dropped or missed, you could then, the next ball, you could still change the game or rectify the mistake that you made. But I think from a point of view where my fielding was something that I really loved to do, so that was a big asset. And then having watched a goalkeeper, because I was the striker playing football, playing hockey, so watching the goalkeeper doing what they did to try and keep the ball out of the net was a similar approach that I had at backward point. So if Sachin Tendulkar was batting, I knew I had 5 meters of goal and 2.5 meters either side, and that was what I was going to protect.
The way you visualized it.
But it was just a case of utilizing tennis, utilizing hockey, and utilizing football to make me a better fielder. And I think that's the key I try and impart on young cricket players, because it's great to focus, but that's when there is pressure. If you're just playing cricket, there is a lot of pressure on you. Your parents are maybe putting pressure on you. And if you're not playing the other sports, what are you doing? Most young players are sitting on social media and they're seeing how many likes they've got and what the negative comments, and they're blocking people. And, in my generation, you had a newspaper. You had the option of reading it or not reading it. Now on social media, you often don't get the option. It gets sent to you.
Some journalists writing something?
Yeah, I think most people, not just players, have an ego. So and none of us like to have negative comments thrown in our direction. But that was the one parting message I had when I retired to the South African cricket team, especially to the young players. I just said, if you don't like to read about the bad news, do not read the good news. Because you can't just have the one side and not accept the other. So if you're going to take both, that's fine, embrace it. But if you're not going to read the bad news, Because the first thing, the easiest thing to do is in a hotel with a newspaper outside, if you've done well the day before, open the door and read all about yourself. But 2 weeks later, the same journalists are saying, well, JONTY RHODES hasn't scored runs. Is he as valuable with his fielding? Should he not make way for a genuine batter or rounder? So that was my one piece of advice to the young players when I left. If you can't read the bad news, do not touch the good news. Yeah.
92 World Cup, Mr. Rhodes, was your nation's first World Cup as well. First time on the grandest stage. You're playing against Pakistan. You know what I'm going to ask right now.
Sure.
Against a formidable Pakistan side, who were eventual champions, that run out. What if you had thrown? Of course, there was one stump to aim at, but with the ability, very few would doubt you to even hit the target. How do you see in hindsight? Of course, ifs and buts. We could go on till late night talking about it. But what was that moment when you thought that, you know what, I'm fast enough to reach the stumps?
Well, interestingly enough, I never thought to throw, because that was the one aspect of my fielding that wasn't very good at the start. Because we never had, now you have a fielding coach, you've got nets that pop up, you've got stumps that bounce back. So you can go do drills on your own with 10 cricket balls. We didn't have 10 cricket balls lying around. You had to go and steal a few out of the nets. You had to go and ask a teammate, come hit me some catches. But we didn't have any other equipment to enhance our fielding. And it was just about the stopping, being the goalkeeper. So when I got the opportunity to throw the ball, I could see Imran Khan was at the non-striker's end. And again, the benefits of playing football and hockey is that you've got good peripheral vision, because somebody's marking you. You can't just look at where the player is. You've got to find the gap and lay the ball off. And I could see Imran Khan standing at the non-striker's end with his hand up, so he wasn't going to come.
So you knew already that?
I knew already. So there were 3 stumps that is obviously
in place,
a much better chance of success, of hitting. And the one stump at backward point, because I was also quite deep, because we were trying to stop the boundaries. So I wasn't as close as I had been before. So my accuracy wasn't something that I had confidence in, but my speed was something that I backed. And then Inzamam was coming back faster than I anticipated. So I felt the fastest way to travel those last 2 meters was full length through the air. Some photographer took a great picture, and by mistake, I went through his picture.
This is something incredible that JONTY sir has said. I don't know how many people of my crew or every Abro sir is also here noticed that. Of course, we know about the run out, but this is. I was born in 2000, not to make him feel old. This happened in '92, but it's so iconic. Very few people know what he just mentioned. He's the peripheral view. He saw that Inzamam wasn't interested. I mean, this is incredible. I'm having goosebumps literally. For him to see that, and you were relatively young at that time, to have that kind of maturity was big. JONTY sir, then what happens is you come into coaching. You were 2007, as you said, rightly said, there were no concept of fielding coaches. You went in the IPL, you saw so many young players. By the way, we were hearing rumors that you might be India fielding coach as well. We'll not get to that because that never materialized. We would love to hope that you do give your guidance to our Indian national team. However, sir, you had mentioned that you're more of a mentor, and you see guys nowadays who have so much of pressure. Of course, there's a distinct difference between how cricket has been seen. Why I mentioned cricket is seen in India is like an obsession. They will criticize you, they'll love you. That's what love is about. It's about 2 extremes. Might not have been the case in South Africa when you were playing. Do you have these kind of conversations with players that they're humans at the end of the day? They're youngsters, 24, 25, 26.
I think it changed. The IPL changed through the pandemic, because generally before that, and especially in an Indian context, the young players, they know they're coming into the environment. They might not get many opportunities. They want to leave the tournament having worked hard, been exposed to international coaches, the experience of international players, working with them in the nets. So you can leave an IPL a better player without even playing the game. But then you need some sort of support, and often in an IPL environment that came from family. So a lot of family members would come and visit the players and spend time, and you would often have the mother and the father come in for dinner, and it was pretty amazing. But through the pandemic, with the isolation and the biosecure bubble, as a coach, you no longer could just have one job of upskilling a player. You also had to mentor those players, because it's difficult to talk to a peer. And as a coach, we had that role, and we started buddy systems where you would look after 5 or 6 players, and it wasn't just the coach; it was all the management staff. So the physiotherapists, because they're often the people who are spending time massaging and giving the players their recovery and their treatment, and the players there for an hour, and they can sort of voice their frustrations or their concerns. So through the pandemic, it made us realize that we need to be more than just the coach. We need to have a mentorship side to our, to our department, and it's not just the upskilling, the physical and the technical stuff. It's also about the emotional and the mental sort of upskilling, where we had to be very aware that these players were now living in this bubble for 10 months of the year, some of them, and so isolated from their usual comforts and and support system, that we had to become a support structure too. So it was a good lesson, because it's pretty much continued, because the stress emotionally hasn't just dissipated because there's no longer a bubble. The stress is still there, so we have a role to play.
Jonty sir, you have been a part of many franchises, starting with MI. You had some players to coach, from starting with Tendulkar and Ponting. You've been with Punjab Kings previously, Kings 11 Punjab, Lucknow. So because you have been in the same position at different franchises, different set of people, different environment, do you think, because you've been a part of successful franchises, you've won the trophies, and you've also been with teams which haven't, right? For example, Punjab, season is not going well. Could you see a stark difference in the environment affecting the team's performance, just as a coaching point of view, from a coach's point of view?
Well, I think winning trophies is obviously what everybody wants to do, and we know that not everybody is going to do it. When there were 8 teams, it was tough enough, and now there are 10 franchises, and these are the best players in the world, want to perform at the IPL, because that's basically, cricket has become a business, and not just because you're a franchise owner, but for the players as well. Exactly. It has become business.
Rightly so.
And and they want to perform. So it is a case of, if you haven't won trophies, there's going to be consequence, because it is a business model, and their goals and objectives, and people have these targets. So I think that the frustrating thing in any environment is that through auctions and releases, and you try as coaches to build up a team culture and sort of an ethos similar to you would in a business environment. You want a team culture, and it's quite difficult when teams change. Every 3-4 years there's a mega auction. In between that, players are released. So you want continuity as much as possible, and that's tough and frustrating. I think that's where MI, Chennai, CSK have done really, really well. The same as Mumbai Indians, is that they've kept the teams as constant as possible throughout. And they've really backed. I mean, at one stage, CSK were criticised for the sort of Dhoni's old army, but they produced. That every player knew their role and how to do their job. And I think,
if you see KKR, for example, they had all unknown names as well. So do you think there is no proper recipe to winning a championship?
There is no recipe. I think there's so many different thoughts and theories, and they talk about batters will win you a game, but not a tournament. And you go back to RCB and you go, well, they've got the best batters in the world, but they play on a great surface. If you're batting at Chinnaswamy, you're only going to, the first 5 batters are probably only going to bat, and then DK is going to come in and smash 30 off 10 balls. So it's no good having the 7 best batters in the world, but your bowling is maybe an area that you could have spent more money. So there is no one formula. I think if there was, everybody would be pushing that button, but there isn't. It's what brings a team together, and continuity and consistency, without obviously just picking players because you have to. I mean, there's no guarantee. There's no automatic selection, but as much continuity. I think if you go back to all the stats, and now with data, the most important person at the auction is the owner, one with the purse, but it's not the head coach. It's actually the analyst. The data analyst can say, okay, this player, we can spend also this amount of money, because then we lose this much purse, and then if we spend more, we can't get that player.
It's quite a headache.
There's well, it's a massive headache, but it's just showing us how much data there is available, and how much coaching staff and management depend on that data. So I think that's been a huge change. I think sides that don't get overwhelmed and overutilize data, because you still want to do the basics really well, but I think choosing a squad based on data is what everybody's doing, but then getting people to understand their role. Head coaches and captains play a massive role in that. When they're working together, CSK have a great continuity with Fleming and Dhoni at the helm from the inception. So that just shows. I think that is probably the one
sign of a successful
one of the key formulas to a successful team.
Since we have got you, Mr. Rhodes, there's something I can't let you go right now without asking. That is, I'm not going to ask about any Indian cricketer. Something I don't think anybody has really asked you this openly is about someone who was predicted to be your successor, Mr. Abraham Benjamin. Many people think that you gave the baton or the throne to him, as far as fielding is concerned, and of course he's a superman just like you are. Probably you used to be in the cricket field, and even now, if you go, I'm sure looking at you, keeping fit, there's a disciplined lifestyle as we spoke, even off camera as well. Do you think he's lived up to the expectation of being the next Jonty Rhodes?
Well, I was frustrated for so long because he was a wicket keeper. I thought he was like the best player and fielder in the
You
world.
were the very few people who voiced your opinion against him.
It's, sure. I mean, the wicket keeper, you get a lot of deliveries, but you're not going to do something spectacular. You're going to be catching a lot of cricket balls. But in the field, he is a genius. I mean, he really is. And Glenn Maxwell, I think, has similar attributes. He just plucks balls out of the sky. He'll make a run out of nothing. But ABD was, as a cricket player, I mean, obviously batting next level, but as a fielder, he also then got into positions that I never had to field in. So these youngsters, the next generation, they didn't just take the baton or the throne. I think they kicked out all the old philosophies around, okay, Jonty Rhodes is a good fielder, but he fields there. These guys were fielding all the hot spots that, depending on the batter, depending on the innings, what over you were in, those all changed. So you had to be really fluid and adaptable in where you were fielding. And AB, for me, was just an absolute genius in the field. So very frustrating every time he had the gloves on. But he was a genius there too.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So, Jonty sir, how does it make you feel? And do you and AB have conversations about cricket, or is it just two mates meeting?
Yeah, cricket is not, if you're an ex-cricket player, cricket doesn't really come into the conversation. It's more around golf, or he wants to come to Goa and learn how to surf for his YouTube channel, so there's still business, but it's the business side of cricket that he's talking about. So when cricket players, past cricket players in sort of what I've seen, and I've spent some time with the Australian ex-players when I've done some commentary work in Australia, they don't just talk cricket. I mean, these guys, well, they have lives. But also to remember that in the sort of start of my career, I was one of 4 university students at that 92 World Cup. We had a lawyer in Dave Richardson, who was the ICC then CEO at the end of his career. 2 teachers in Fani de Villiers and Brian McMillan. Adrian Caper was an apple farmer. So we had these real diverse...
Yet Kepler Wessels has already played for
Australia. Yeah. So I think this has now changed. Obviously, cricket has now become your lifeblood and your income source. So a lot of the guys, they just escape totally from the game because they're spending 10 months of the year playing in different leagues as well as for their countries. And when you have time off, the last thing you want to do is discuss cricket, I can assure you.
Jonty sir, thank you so much for your valuable time. And I want to also thank you for, as you said, you've inspired, but also been a revolution and a thorough gentleman that you are as well. Appreciate your time.
Cool.
Thank you.
All righty.